With age comes wisdom, but it also brings a spotlight. People start watching your every move, your choices, your emotions, your appearance. And the truth is, not everything about you needs to be visible or explained. There are certain parts of your life, your mindset, and your emotions that deserve privacy, not because they're shameful, but because they're sacred. Let's talk about what you should keep for yourself, not out of fear, but out of power. There's a kind of strength that doesn't come from how loud you speak, but from how quietly you hold your ground. When someone knows what gets under your skin, they hold a piece of your control. Emotional triggers are like switches, small, sensitive, and powerful. And the moment you let people see where they are, you hand them the remote. It's not about being cold or disconnected. It's about choosing peace over reaction. When you learn to protect your triggers, you stop letting others pull you into emotional traps you didn't set. See, the problem isn't that people know you. The problem is when they know too much about what bothers you. Maybe someone criticizes your age, your looks, your choices, or your pace in life, and suddenly you feel the sting. But the truth is, that sting doesn't come from them. It comes from within. They just pressed a button you left exposed. When you guard that button, you keep your composure. You become unpredictable, not in a chaotic way, but in a grounded, self-assured way that says, you can't move me that easily. Hiding your emotional triggers doesn't mean pretending you don't feel. It means you process before you respond. You pause before you speak. You breathe before you let words leave your mouth that you can't take back. When you do that, you create space. Space between what happens and how you react to it. That's where emotional maturity lives. That's where real self-control grows. The goal is not to suppress emotion. The goal is to master expression. Because once you can feel something without it controlling you, that's power in its purest form. Every person you meet is testing boundaries, sometimes without even knowing it. They'll say things to see how far they can go, what kind of response they'll get, what buttons they can push, and when you react too quickly, you show them the code to your peace. But when you stay calm, when you don't flinch, don't frown, don't feed the drama, they realize they have no power over you. Silence becomes your protection. Composure becomes your shield. You start teaching people how to treat you, not by arguing, but by being unshakable. And that's something many overlook. Emotional privacy is self-respect. When you let everyone know what frustrates you, annoys you, or hurts you, you give them leverage, sometimes unintentionally. People talk, people use, and people test. But when you keep your triggers hidden, your peace becomes untouchable. You become harder to manipulate, harder to read, and harder to control. You stop being reactive and start being strategic. You stop being predictable and start being powerful. Not because you're faking it, but because you understand that peace is personal property and not everyone deserves access to it. Think about how many times you've walked away from a conversation feeling drained, angry, or misunderstood. That's what happens when you let people reach parts of you they haven't earned. You don't owe everyone emotional transparency. You can be kind without being exposed, honest without being vulnerable to the wrong audience. Not everyone is a safe place for your feelings. That's why maturity is knowing when to speak and when to stay silent. Because sometimes silence speaks louder. It says, I know what you're trying to do, but I'm not giving you that satisfaction. And here's the truth. Hiding your emotional triggers is not about building walls. It's about building filters. Walls keep everyone out. Filters let the right people in. It's about protecting your peace so you can show up in the world strong, steady, and confident. When you no longer react to every comment, every criticism, every piece of gossip, you win. You win because your calm is your power. And the less people know what disturbs your peace, the more control you have over your own energy. That's how you lead with quiet strength, not loud defense. There's something powerful about moving in silence. When you start talking too early about what you're planning to do, you invite noise into your vision. Every idea you share gets weighed down by opinions, doubts, and comparisons. And before you know it, that spark that once motivated you starts to dim, not because your plan isn't good, but because too many voices have touched it. Protecting your future plans isn't secrecy born out of fear, it's discipline. It's about understanding that some goals need to grow in the dark before they can shine in the light. When you announce your dreams too soon, you unintentionally start performing for approval. You begin to care about who's watching, who's supporting, who's not, and who's judging. That pressure shifts your focus from building to proving. But progress thrives in quiet. It doesn't need applause to grow. It needs consistency. When you stop explaining what you're working on and just start doing it, your energy stays pure. You don't lose momentum trying to convince people that your idea is valid. You simply let your results speak for themselves. People don't always see your vision the way you do. They might not understand it, and sometimes they'll discourage you without meaning harm. Other times they'll do it because they can't stand to see you aim higher than they ever dared to. Not everyone is against you, but not everyone is for you either. When you hide your plans, you keep that energy clean. You protect your ideas from being watered down by other people's fears and from being stolen by those who lack imagination but crave attention. Silence becomes your strategy, not your weakness. Every dream needs protection from premature exposure. Think about how seeds grow. They start underground, unseen, protected from harsh conditions. They don't rush to the surface just to prove they're growing. They wait until they're strong enough to handle the light. Your plans deserve that same patience. Give them time to take root before you announce them. When you do, your success becomes undeniable because it's been built quietly, brick by brick, far from the noise of opinion. You don't owe the world a preview. You owe yourself the peace to create without interference. There's a quiet confidence in people who move with purpose but without explanation. You see it in the way they work, the way they carry themselves, the way they disappear for a while and come back transformed. They're not secretive, they're focused. They understand that every time they talk about what they're doing, they're releasing energy that should have been used to do it. Protecting your plans is about preserving your focus. It's about using your energy to build, not to justify, explain, or prove your intentions to people who aren't contributing to them. When you speak too soon, you invite distraction. People start asking questions, giving opinions, and projecting their own limitations onto your path. Some will even start competing with you for something they never cared about until they heard you mention it. You don't need that interference. You don't need validation. The satisfaction of quietly achieving something that no one saw coming, that's the kind of peace that can't be bought. The world doesn't need to know what's next. It just needs to see the result when it's done, because when the results arrive, the same people who doubted you will call it luck. Let them. You'll know it was discipline. So hide your future plans not because you're unsure, but because you're wise enough to protect what's still growing. Silence is not emptiness. It's incubation. It's where vision matures and focus sharpens. Keep your dreams tucked close until they're ready to stand on their own. Because when you finally reveal them, you won't need to explain, defend, or justify anything. The outcome will do all the talking. There's a quiet kind of power in keeping your personal life private. When it comes to relationships, the less the world knows, the stronger the bond becomes. People love stories, and when you start sharing too much, your connection turns into entertainment for others. Every time you talk about your arguments, your happy moments, or your private conversations, you invite opinions into something sacred. Relationships aren't meant to be managed by a committee of outsiders. They grow best in silence, in trust, and in mutual respect. What belongs between two people shouldn't be up for public review. When you make your relationship a topic of conversation, you hand the world a magnifying glass. People start observing, speculating, and sometimes even wishing for cracks they can talk about. What starts as innocent curiosity can turn into unwanted interference. The truth is, most people don't want advice. They want validation. They want to know they're right. But a relationship isn't about proving who's right. It's about understanding. When you expose too much, you risk turning your bond into a debate. The strength of any relationship lies in privacy, not publicity. Every couple faces challenges, disagreements, and misunderstandings. That's normal. But when those private moments are shared outside, even with good intentions, They lose their intimacy. Words can get twisted, context gets lost, and suddenly you're fighting not just your issue, but everyone else's opinions about it. Protecting your relationship details isn't hiding, it's honoring. It's choosing to handle matters where they belong, with the person involved, not with the audience watching. When you protect your privacy, you protect your peace. There's a difference between secrecy and discretion. Secrecy hides, discretion guards. One comes from fear, the other from wisdom. You can still celebrate love, speak kindly of your partner, and share moments without giving away the essence of your bond. Discretion says, this is ours. It doesn't need approval, applause, or explanation. The more you share, the more room you create for misunderstanding, gossip, and unnecessary judgment. The less you share, the more space you leave for trust, authenticity, and growth. Some things are too delicate to survive public exposure. When people know too much about your relationship, they start to expect updates. They ask questions. They form opinions. And if something goes wrong, you're left explaining yourself to people who were never supposed to be part of your story in the first place. That's why it's wise to build your connection quietly. Love doesn't need validation to be real. It needs protection to stay strong. The best relationships are the ones where both people are more focused on understanding each other than impressing everyone else. When the bond is genuine, it doesn't need an audience to feel secure. There's a peace that comes from knowing your relationship isn't being measured by anyone else's standards. You stop comparing, stop competing, and start appreciating. You don't need to post every picture, share every detail, or prove your happiness online. What matters isn't how it looks to the world, it's how it feels in private. Love becomes more meaningful when it's nurtured away from the spotlight. Privacy allows you to be real, vulnerable, and imperfect without the pressure to perform. It lets you work through struggles with patience instead of pride. So, keep your relationship details between you and the one who matters. Let the world see respect, not receipts. Let them sense peace, not proof. A private relationship doesn't mean you're hiding. It means you're protecting something worth keeping. Because when too many eyes are watching, even the most beautiful connection can start to lose its focus. Love grows stronger when it's protected from unnecessary noise. And sometimes the most powerful relationships are the ones no one fully understands except the two people in it. Money has a strange way of revealing people's true colors. The moment others know what you earn, what you own, or what you plan to buy, their perception of you changes. Some begin to admire you, others begin to envy you, and a few quietly start keeping score. That's why your financial life deserves privacy. When you keep your financial moves hidden, you protect yourself from unnecessary judgment, expectation, and manipulation. Not everything you earn, save, or invest needs to be public knowledge. True wealth isn't about what people see, it's about what you quietly build behind the scenes. There's a calm confidence in people who don't flaunt what they have. They don't announce promotions, post every purchase, or brag about how much they're earning. They simply live well, not loudly, but wisely. Financial privacy gives you control over how others see you, because once people know your numbers, they start making assumptions. They decide whether to treat you as competition, opportunity, or charity. But when you move silently, you leave no space for those assumptions to grow. You keep your focus where it belongs, on stability, not validation. The moment you start discussing your financial moves with too many people, you invite opinions that can cloud your judgment. Everyone has advice, but not everyone has wisdom. Some will tell you what to buy, where to invest, or what to avoid based on their comfort, not your vision. Money decisions are personal. They depend on your goals, your responsibilities, and your timing. Sharing too much makes you vulnerable to influence, and influence can lead to mistakes. Protecting your financial privacy allows you to make clear, intentional choices without the pressure of external voices. There's also safety in silence. When people don't know what you have, they can't misuse it, borrow it, or manipulate you with it. You'd be surprised how often relationships, friendships, even family dynamics shift when money enters the picture. Expectations appear, boundaries blur, and generosity gets mistaken for obligation. Keeping your finances private doesn't mean you're selfish. It means you're smart. You're choosing to protect your independence from being tied to anyone else's opinion or entitlement. You're building security, not attention. Financial privacy also keeps you humble. When you don't use your income to prove your worth, you start valuing things that money can't buy: peace, integrity, and simplicity. You stop competing and start focusing on progress. The wealthiest people aren't always the loudest. They're the ones who don't need to prove they're winning. They let their quiet consistency speak for them. They understand that wealth grows faster when it's protected, not paraded. Because the more you reveal, the more you invite comparison. And comparison always costs more than it gives. Money attracts energy, both good and bad. Some people will celebrate your success, others will quietly resent it. You can't control that, but you can control what you reveal. Keeping your financial moves private shields you from unnecessary envy and judgment. It lets you enjoy what you've earned without feeling guilty or exposed. It allows you to give, invest, and spend in ways that align with your values, not other people's opinions. Financial growth is deeply personal, and when it's done quietly, it becomes peaceful. So, protect your financial story the same way you'd protect your passwords. What you have, what you're building, and what you're planning are no one's business but yours. Move in silence, grow with intention, and let your results speak when they're ready. Because the less people know about your finances, the more control you have over them. Quiet success is harder to attack, harder to envy, and harder to copy. That's why privacy isn't just about secrecy, it's about security. Everyone feels uncertain at times, but the moment you let the wrong person see your doubt, you give them permission to question your strength. Self-doubt is natural, but it's also deeply personal. It's that quiet voice that whispers, "Can I really do this?" And while it's okay to feel it, it's not always wise to reveal it, because not everyone will comfort you when you show vulnerability. Some will use it to measure how far they can push you. That's why you must protect your self-doubt like a wound that's still healing. You can acknowledge it privately, but don't let it become visible to those who might turn it into a weakness. There's a difference between being honest and being exposed. Sharing your struggles with someone trustworthy is strength. Broadcasting them to people who don't care is surrender. The world doesn't always offer empathy. Sometimes it offers judgment. When you hide your self-doubt, you maintain control over your image, your energy, and your momentum. You keep your confidence intact even when it's still under construction. You don't have to be perfect to be powerful. You just have to appear grounded enough to not let your uncertainty shake your focus. Hiding your self-doubt doesn't mean denying your feelings. It means you face them privately with awareness instead of panic. You work through them quietly, journaling, reflecting, adjusting your mindset, taking small steps toward progress. Because every person who's ever achieved anything great has questioned themselves along the way. The difference is they didn't let that doubt leak into their actions. They moved forward even when they weren't sure. They understood that confidence isn't the absence of doubt. It's the decision to keep going despite it. That's the kind of strength that earns respect without needing explanation. When you reveal your insecurities too openly, people start treating you based on them. They begin to tiptoe around your confidence, offering pity where you needed accountability, or worse, using your uncertainty to manipulate your choices. Some will sense your hesitation and take advantage of it to assert control or superiority. That's why composure matters. You don't have to feel certain every moment, but you do need to look calm enough to lead yourself through uncertainty. Because people respond to the energy you project, not the thoughts you hide. Self-doubt loses power when it's managed quietly. When you stop feeding it with words, you stop giving it space to grow. Instead of saying, "I don't know if I can," you start thinking, "I'll figure it out." That small shift keeps your mind working towards solutions instead of spiraling into fear. And when others see that steadiness, that quiet confidence, even in moments of confusion, They trust you more. They follow your calm, not your chaos. The most composed people aren't the ones who never doubt themselves. They're the ones who never let doubt control their expression. There's also something freeing about keeping your self-doubt private. You stop waiting for validation. You stop needing reassurance from people who don't truly understand your path. You become your own source of confidence, building it through small wins and quiet persistence. Every time you push through fear without announcing it, you train your mind to depend less on approval and more on discipline. That's